Hi there, welcome to this week's midweek market analysis. So with that, let's jump in straight into the market and share with you some updates as to what we have for this week over here. Now, taking a look first at the dollar index, what I'm seeing over here is a potential tree wave completed. Obviously, there are more than one possible scenario of how this can play out, but as of now, this is the primary count that I have. Obviously, we can see, as I mentioned, right, a couple of different counts over here. But why I do this as a primary because of last Thursday's CPI data, we kind of had a very impulsive break of this channel structure, and therefore what I'm seeing over here is from this high, potentially we can count it as a 1, 2, 3, and then of course we're expecting wave 4 to develop and another 5 wave down. And this would give us a bigger wave 3 from this high, which is 1, 2, and then this is the 3. Okay, so we are basically looking at an internal 5 wave of a bigger wave 3. And what we are expecting now is that the market has tested just recently around 1618, extension around 105.70, which kind of give us the minimum expectation of wave 3, right? So there's a good possibility here that we're gonna see a bit of a retracement, okay, to complete the wave 4. And if we can see a very corrective nature of this move to the upside and giving us that wave 4 completion, then what we have over here is a potential sell trade to take it lower. Okay, so wave 4 usually we can expect a little bit more of a retracement towards like 236 or even 382, and this here probably will need to give it a bit more time. Maybe this is already on forward, so maybe the earliest we might potentially see a clear corrective structure is by end of this week, and that would then give us the potential setup going into next week where we can continue to see more downside for the dollar. Okay, so that's the overview of the dollar index. And if you go over to the euro, we do have a little bit of a neutral perspective going forward here, at least for the remaining part of this week, because right now we're kind of at what we call a key level where we do expect the price to give us more information, right? So this is kind of like also what we call an inflection point, where we want to be neutral when the market is around the zone and look for confirmation from price structure itself. So at this moment here, we can see from this low we have a clear 3 wave, right? So of course, depending on how you're going to count it, from me right now, this is a potential 1, and over here this is a potential running flat, which is internally we have that 3, and from here we have another 1, right? So we kind of have a bigger 1, 2, 3 coming around that 123.6. Okay, so we are expecting some kind of reaction, and we are seeing it since yesterday. If we can get a decent corrective pullback like that by the end of this week, then of course next week we're gonna carry on with our bullish momentum and bias to the upside, right? Which we're gonna have a buy opportunity. Alternatively, if we see a strong rejection lower and we can see a tiny bit of consolidation here by the end of this week, then next week we're gonna look for a short-term sell first. Okay, so that's why I say right now it's best to maintain a little bit of a neutral perspective and see how the market develops first, right? We need more sign from here. And then for the pound dollar, right now market just broke a little bit off this trend line here, but that doesn't mean immediately we're gonna jump in and buy, because overall this still doesn't very look convincing to the upside. Unless we can get a very decent corrective move like that, then yes, we'll be looking for a buy. But this can be just a simple false break, retrace back, does a bit of a consolidation, and then this just come back lower. Okay, so pound dollar, I think in terms of the bias here, would still maintain a rather neutral perspective. Give it a little bit more time. I think a couple of days by the end of this week, perhaps similar to the dollar index or even the euro dollar, we're gonna get a bit more clarity to decide, right, whether we want to focus on the buy or we want to focus on the sell. Okay, so basically euro and the pound will maintain a rather neutral perspective. Aussie here, to be honest, is quite similar to the chart on euro. However, Aussie, I'm a little bit to the bull side as compared to the euro. Okay, but of course we also want to wait for that confirmation, which means we want to see at least a decent corrective structure here for a potential buy trade, right? So again, this will probably kick in around late this week or even early next week. Okay, so most of this major pairs from last week's CPI, they're basically having that impulsive move, and therefore every time we just see an impulse, we want to give time to the market to develop the corrective structure for us to enter another trade. Okay, of course, if you do not have any right now, in terms of the major pairs here, you don't have any active trades, then remain patient, right? If you managed to ride on last week's US CPI data, then that's great. Just hold on to those positions, manage it accordingly. Okay. Now, in terms of dollar CAD here, today we might get a potential setup. Okay, in line with the evening Canadian CPI data. So I think you know that right now CPI is important because it deals with inflation, and basically all the banks are looking at inflationary data. So it's gonna create some kind of volatility, right? And the overall time frame structure over here on the Canadian dollar is to the downside, right? So we have still that head and shoulder pattern, very nice little break. Right now, in this little part here, we can see a tiny bit of consolidation. Okay, and that's great, right? Because if you go down to the 1 hour, this consolidation looks neat. It looks nice in a way where the low and the top is being respected quite nicely. We are in a range environment, and combining the time perspective of the news coming later in the evening today, I'm personally looking for a potential entry to take the breakout to the downside. Okay, so one way to look up for it is you can put in a breakout entry maybe closer towards the release of the news, and the expectation over here is that when the news release, we're gonna see the CAD strengthening, and then of course dollar CAD will drop impulsively, right? That's the whole idea of this breakout trade. Your stop can be placed just above that recent high, which is currently somewhere around 3340. Okay, so it's not really a tight range. If you measure this very quickly, I think that's about 100, close to 100 pips, right? And your target for now, you can aim somewhere around 3030, 1.3030. That will give you still a risk reward of 1:2, so it's still fairly decent. Okay, I think this to me, among the major pairs, is definitely one of the clearest potential setup going into today. Okay, so if you're interested in that, definitely you want to pay close attention to the dollar CAD. Dollar yen here, quite similar in terms of the wave count expectation, right? So from the top over here, we kind of have a first move, and then we have a running flat, and then this is the wave 3 coming down to 1618. So as of now, we're expecting that wave 4 to develop. Okay, and if we put in that FIB, again, wave 4 most of the time comes towards 236 and 382. So we're going to give it a bit of time. If let's say that development moving forward from here is going to be corrective in nature, then next week we have an opportunity to sell the dollar yen further to the downside. Okay, so give it some time, yeah. Now in terms of gold, we had a very nice little push to the upside, okay, from CPI, and of course if you combine with overall money flow concept, right? I think you know that last week we have a lot of issue with one of the crypto exchange, FTX. That kind of sparked fear within the crypto community in terms of the stability of exchanges, the safety of their funds and things like that. And more or less, there will be capital flowing out of the crypto market, and you want to then study, if the market capital comes out, the money comes out from the crypto, where would they likely go? Okay, so there's a good possibility some of those might flow into precious metal, okay, like gold. So definitely we are still holding on to a very bullish perspective on this, but of course it doesn't mean that every day you just buy in. Right now what I'm seeing here is that we seem to have a little bit of a lack of momentum already. Okay, so my suggestion is, if you do not have any buy trade right now, wait for that decent pullback first. Okay, so trading, sometimes you need to just be patient, like this week here, I think a lot of the major pairs are essentially just ending off with an impulse, so you need to give it time. Other than dollar CAD, of course, most of those that I've mentioned, we just need to wait until the end of the week. Okay, so overall upside for gold. Long term is still upside, so if you already have position running, my suggestion is don't cut yourself short. Just manage the position, don't shift your stops too tight, give it room to breathe. Put your take profit like way above, okay, or even if you don't have a take profit, it's perfectly fine, right? Just manage your stops, shield it accordingly. Crude oil over here is a little bit not that clear as of now, because initially we were wanting this to just keep falling, but we start to see a little bit of a V-shape forming in the smaller time frame. So there's a different possibility of how this can play out eventually. I mean, this can still drop overall, okay, but it's gonna probably, if it drops, it's likely gonna do something like this, which means after that, it'll be a very decent trade for us to look for buy around 8210, because then this would be kind of like a crawl pattern. So if you're not in oil and you're interested to trade oil, then my suggestion is just be patient with this kind of development. Just wait until it comes towards 8210 to decide whether you have an opportunity to buy, right? So don't get involved in it right now. If you have any sell trade running, because we talk about how this broke and then this has a retracement, can look for a sell there. If you have any sell trade running, just shift your stops to break even. Let it run risk free. Your target still is around 8210, but that's about it. Okay, let's see how the market develops from here. S&P, okay, last week we have a very nice little run because CPI is weaker than expected. Then again, market will expect the Fed to not be so aggressive, and that will be beneficial for the equities. So we saw that rally. Short term, I think there is still more little upside for the S&P over here. However, you don't want to be overly aggressive yet, okay, because I think right now we might still see a little bit of a pullback first, okay, maybe towards at 50%. If I stretch this trend line over here, you can see that that kind of gives us a pretty decent confluence as well. Okay, so my suggestion is quite similar to most of the dollar pairs. Give it time for this week to see what it wants to develop, right? Because this looks pretty much of a crawl, so we can expect a little bit of a pullback, and then that would give us another opportunity somewhere around that zone. Good. Okay, so that's all from me for this week's update over here. All the best to your trading. To quickly summarize, I think one of the clearest setup right now is going to be on the dollar Canadian. If you're trading the news, then that's best. You can leverage on it together. Okay, so all the best to that. Reminder to manage your risk, and I'll see you guys in the next one.